Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
From her rich and fertile valleys to the shores of her icy seas, from her fields and farms and shellfish beds and her many nurseries, for the finest of her flavor, for the freshest by far, choose the things Alaskans bring to the market where you are. Products that we're proud to call our own, and it's all Alaska grown.
The National Weather Service.
Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for Saturday's Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service. Still have a flood advisory going here for the interior rivers, the Chinas and Salsa, Tanana rivers. Still localized minor flooding occurring on those river basins, expected to continue through tomorrow and possibly beyond. Today's satellite showing a pretty good storm here rolling on across the southeast coast today, with the front already pushing inland into western Canada. Gusty winds and a fair amount of rain coming across the southeast coast all the way back to Yakutat, and some of that getting up into the eastern interior this afternoon. Break right through here. Some sunshine, partly to occasionally mostly sunny across areas of south central Alaska, on up into the Susitna Valley areas. Temperatures 60s to lower 70s. The next system spreading rain from the Seward Peninsula all the way down across the southwest coast, that advancing in toward the Kuskokwim Valley today, and that front trailing back out to the west across Nunivak Island and up near St. Matthew. Some breaks, clouds, no precipitation though across the Pribilof Islands, although westerly winds are on the gusty side. And then a lot of moisture here slipping up to the western and central Aleutians. A little bit of rain possibly reaching the Adak area this afternoon, kind of socked in with the fog out at Shimya. And up to the north, some pretty good sunshine breaking out over the central north slope all the way across the Noatak Valley out to the coastline. Probably saw some sun there at Point Lay, but a lot of lower clouds from roughly Wainwright across New Ixit on out to the eastern Arctic coast. You got back into the fog. On the chart today, here's that next system sliding southeastward here, bringing the rain into the southwest coast, back on up to the Seward Peninsula, and then kind of merging with this low center here, the precipitation becoming more showery, convective, some scattered thunderstorms up through here this afternoon, but no big outbreaks at all, with showers extending up to the eastern Brooks Range area. Low visibilities, IFR, low clouds and fog there, eastern Arctic coast of the fog, mostly over toward Barter Island, Kaktovik, that lifting toward Barrow, and then you get into clear skies over the northwest. This front narrow band of precipitation extending west of there, south of St. Lawrence Island. They had a few breaks this afternoon. And also here over the southeast Bering Sea, there's that warm front spreading some moisture northward to the Aleutians. And then the storm that rolled through the southeast coast today brought over 2 inches of rain from late last night into the mid-afternoon hours here to Yakutat, while Petersburg had about 1 inch of rain in the same time period, and Juneau picked up 2/3 of an inch of precipitation. Just some isolated scattered showers here over the Copper River Basin, maybe the Talkeetnas, coastal mountains, back up into the interior areas. A little more continuous, a little more widespread up over the central interior than they were farther to the south, and then the sunshine here. Northwest winds keeping it dry across Kodiak Island, and then some precipitation there on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula. Sunshine along the south side. High clouds spreading into southern Cook Inlet across Kodiak Island. And for tonight, we'll see rain lifts in, fog, drizzle, IFR type weather there into the central Aleutians, keeping it conditions low all the way back toward Shimia, and some moisture there again on the lee side, or the windward side of the peninsula and eastern Aleutian areas. So a chance of some drizzle or fog there into the Unalaska area. This system continues to slide southeastward and then a little bit to the east. So rain from roughly the central and southern Kuskokwim Valley right down across Bristol Bay into Port Hayden and Pilot Point and those areas on up toward King Salmon. Back to the west there, approaching the Pribilof Islands. Look for rain probably after midnight tonight. Light rain and fog, nothing heavy at all. And showers, mostly cloudy skies, scattered showers across the southern interior. Staying dry here over south central Alaska, but look for the clouds to gradually increase throughout the evening and overnight time. Cloudy along the North Gulf Coast, maybe a few breaks. Chance of showers late there for Kodiak Island. And pretty good shower activity this evening and tonight here, mostly over the eastern panhandle areas, but this trough still off the coast. Remainder of the upper level system that's pulling off to the northeast. That'll be gradually moving through, so that's going to keep the showers going in that area through tomorrow, but begin to taper off, probably end here over the southern panhandle with some possible sunshine there for Heidelberg, Craig, on over to Ketchikan and Metlakatla, but pretty showery and cloudy up to the north, all diminishing in the afternoon. Definitely the winds coming down a lot lighter than what was seen there today, especially to the south. And then this system, more rain coming in across southern Alaska, all of the Alaska Range, Kuskokwim Valley. Getting a little more showery here toward the back edge out to the west, and still some scattered showers, but to a lesser extent than what was seen today up there to the north with sunshine. Say fair conditions, dry north of the White Mountains there, up and across the Brooks Range. North Slope looking good again tomorrow, as well as the western Arctic coast, all the way down to the Yukon Delta. Coastline there drying out as this moisture pulls eastward, and possibly clearing skies there, even maybe late in the afternoon in toward Bethel. Low clouds and fog out over the Bering Sea. Kind of breezy there, eastern Arctic coast like today. Saw easterly winds 15 to 25 miles an hour there, with low clouds and fog, kept temperatures in the 30s. But about the same for tomorrow there, and also the same here on the west side. And this front comes across Kodiak Island. Look for just a narrow band of precipitation to accompany it, kind of starting and then stopping, and that should be about it. Maybe a few showers following in behind. And this system lifting northward and then starting to slide off to the southeast, so it's going to keep a chance of rain, fog, and drizzle in over the central Aleutians for tomorrow. And then for Monday, that really just kind of slides off the map there, just low stuff left behind, maybe some drizzle. Areas of IFR, marginal VFR covering the Bering Sea, patchy areas of fog right down to the Alaska Peninsula. Low pressure now just south of Chignik, and the upper level trough coming down as well from the south, so the upper level wind flow is going to switch around and become more southerly to possibly even a little southeasterly. So that's going to reorient this frontal boundary, and as the precipitation pulls off to the east tomorrow night, kind of tapers off here, especially over south central Alaska during the day on Monday. It'll probably Monday morning, it'll pull back to the west. Heaviest rainfall, western Prince William Sound down to the Kenai Peninsula areas, but mostly a wet day, rain, clouds here from the Kuskokwim Valley all the way across the North Gulf Coast. Possibly some rain into the certain areas of the Copper River Basin. Looks pretty dry here for the southeast coast, with possible sunshine over a good portion of the area, lingering showers in the extreme north. And then the southerly flow here, several surges of moisture coming northward in that wind field. And so one coming right through there, increasing the chance of rain over the southern Prince of Wales Island late in the afternoon. For temperatures this afternoon, 50s to lower 60s across the Panhandle, and 60s Copper River Basin, 68 in Valdez. Lower 70s here in the Susitna Valley, both Talkeetna and Big Lake up to 72. Other locations warmer than that, 71 in Seward, 60 at Homer, 70 at Kodiak today. Up to the north, mostly in the 60s, 60 to 65 here in the Tanana Valley. Same thing up to the north, cooling into the 50s for the Brooks Range, 30s and 40s on the Arctic coast, Point Lay. A little sunshine, 54 degrees, up to 70 at Noatak, otherwise the Seward Peninsula with the rain and clouds in the 50s, 48 Savunga, 50s covering all of the southwest interior all the way out to the coastline, 50s for the Pribilofs, 50s and 60s here. Again, the sunshine, warmest conditions on the Pacific side of the peninsula, and into the mid to upper 50s over the central Aleutians. For the lows tonight, 30s and 40s to the north, 40s and 50s to the south, with mostly mid 50s for the Panhandle. And highs for tomorrow, pretty nice here out over the southwest. Sort of signifies maybe a little sunshine breaking out tomorrow afternoon, 65 to 70, all the way up into the Noatak Valley again. 60s through the interior, even 60s here with the increasing rain over southern Alaska, 50s to near 60 for the Panhandle. IFR along the Arctic coast tomorrow, in over Bristol Bay, up along the western Alaska Peninsula. Tomorrow afternoon that all retreats, becoming marginal here for the western Alaska Range, and IFR marginal conditions the entire day there for the southeast coast, trending toward improvement, especially during the afternoon hours. Lots of IFR out over the Bering Sea. Anaktuvik, VFR, same forecast for Adigan. Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal VFR, possible IFR on the western entrances. And for Rainy, marginal VFR. The eastern Alaska Range looks marginal as well, with both Isabel and Mentasta and Tanita, all marginal tomorrow. Portage's marginal VFR, maybe some IFR on the eastern entrance, and Chilkoot and White IFR improving to marginal later in the day. Freezing levels 6 to 8,000 feet here as that next upper level low comes southeastward, and about 8,000 feet over the Panhandle. Otherwise, still pretty warm there over the southern Bering Sea, and the Aleutians warm aloft with 12 to 14,000 foot freezing levels. Icing above 7,000 feet, again, areas of here across all of southern Alaska. Again, improving from west to east throughout the day, and kind of advancing in or toward the eastern border there, and maybe some diminishing icing during the day, mostly above 8,000 feet for the Panhandle of rime or mixed types. And there's that next upper low pulling into the southwest interior for midday tomorrow. The one off the coast now pulls well off into Canada. Northeast winds 70 to 80 knots there from the central Arctic coast, right down along the Bering Sea or along the coastline here, back around to the southwest. And then for 9,000 feet, not too bad. Southwesterly is only 10 to 15 knots here, so not really much of a wind producer with this next system, maybe 25 knots across the peninsula and Kodiak Island. And same thing at 3,000 feet, higher pressure over the Bering Sea, very weak low here over the Alaska Range, southwest 15 to 20 into the southeast coast. Easterlies around 20 for the Arctic coast, west-northwest on out to the west, becoming pretty light over the western Aleutians. Turbulence-wise, below about 14,000 or below 4,000 feet, light to very isolated moderate for the central eastern Arctic coast. Some mechanical stuff here, Kodiak Island, Togiak Bay, Dillingham, also the Alaska Peninsula, and also over the northern southeast coast. And after the break, I'll be back with a look at the marine forecasts.
Tucked away near Soldovia, Alaska, along beautiful Kachemak Bay, is the Kositsna Bay Laboratory, which is operated in partnership by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration and the University of Alaska Fairbanks. This unique marine research and teaching laboratory is dedicated to excellence in marine science and provides a place where people can learn more about marine and coastal ecosystems. Here today to talk about the laboratory are its directors, Chris Holderried and David Christie. Why is the location of the laboratory so important?
Jim, Kachemak Bay is a microcosm in many ways of southern Alaskan coastline. It has rocky coastlines, it has glaciers feeding into it, it has eelgrass beds at the head of the bay, and on the north side it has cliffs that are eroding into the bay. So we can, within just a few miles of the lab, we can access all these different types of ecosystems that live with these different environments.
So you have basically a small little world encapsulated in Kachemak Bay.
Provides a natural laboratory.
Yeah. Well, how long has the lab been around?
The lab's actually been around for as long as Alaska's been a state. It
Wow.
was originally constructed in 1959. There was a recognition back then that some of the same problems we face today with sustainable use of coastal resources, there were some challenges then, particularly in the herring fishery, and they saw the need for more science to understand those changes.
So who oversees the laboratory?
Well, the lab is actually run by NOAA through the National Ocean Service, and in the National Ocean Service it's part of our Coastal Ocean Science program. And then we're run in partnership with the University of Alaska Fairbanks. But one of the interesting things is we actually fall under what is called the Center for Coastal Fisheries and Habitat Research, which is another facility located in Beaufort, North Carolina. Some people say, how do you have this connection between coastal Alaska and coastal North Carolina? But if you look at the issues in both places between fishing and ecotourism and sustainable resources, and they're very, very similar. It's a pretty easy connection to make. There is one of our unique features in the lab is that there is a whole range of folks that get to use the laboratory, both from the research side and from supporting our education missions. On the research side, there's researchers from NOAA offices, from other federal agencies, from state agencies, and as well as university scientists. And from an education group, we've got college students, both undergraduate and graduate, and school children that come for field science camps.
That's outstanding. Well, describe some of the research that's being done at the laboratory.
Well, one of our main focus areas of research at the lab is how do we provide the science to sustain coastal resources. Obviously, use of coastal resources is very important in Alaska, and so how can we support that with good science? Some examples are understanding the underwater habitats and how fish and other species are using those habitats, and supporting uses like local mariculture that the oyster farmers are doing.
A lot of the research at the lab focuses around questions about how ecosystems work. How will they change in the future as temperatures potentially change? How will they change with changing amounts of sediment coming into the bay as the glaciers retreat? And in general, why are things where they are and how are they changing through time? And the particular areas that have been focused on recently in the lab are in the kelp forests, which are extensive in the bay, and of course they provide very good habitat for young fish and other animals, other organisms. And then the extensive intertidal zones. We have 28-foot tidal range in the bay, which means between high and low tide there's very large areas in which a wide variety of marine organisms live. As we move into the future, we'll be increasingly adding components of instrumentation to the lab, so developing and experimenting with new ways of observing and measuring what's going on underwater when people can't be there.
So what classes are being taught at the lab?
There's quite a range of classes, and it changes every year. The big constant for the last 10 years has been the dive classes. We've trained well over 100 divers in that time. Last year there were 600 scuba dives conducted out of the lab. We have a range of classes taking advantage of the access to the ecosystems of the bay, classes on vertebrates, classes on invertebrates. We've had a climate change class there last summer, and a variety of things coming up. Some of the classes are taught by UAF professors, some are taught by our partners at University of Alaska Anchorage, and particularly the local Kenai Peninsula Community College in Homer, and also from Alaska Pacific University.
Partnerships. Can you touch on that, Chris? What partnerships have you forged to further the mission of the laboratory?
Yeah, central to how the laboratory operates is that we do most everything we do in partnership with other organizations. We're fairly limited in our federal staff. Right now we just have 2. And so to accomplish all the science missions and the education missions that NOAA wants in this area, we work obviously with the University of Alaska Fairbanks, other universities to do the education mission, as well as local marine education groups like the Center for Alaskan Coastal Studies in Homer. From a research perspective, we do a lot of work with other NOAA offices, so researchers from other NOAA offices, from in the state with the Kachemak Bay National Estuarine Research Reserve, which covers most of Kachemak Bay, and with the Alaska Department of Fish and Game. That's one of our big partners. And then nationally, we're working with other NOAA offices like the Office of Coast Survey, National Geodetic Survey, and other partners in our coastal ocean science programs.
How do you get the community involved?
Well, that's one of the really fun parts about where the laboratory is and who we get to work with. We do everything from, we have open houses for the general public. We make presentations out in the community. We also get scientists who come into the lab to do research to do presentations on their work, so they get wider exposure to that. We also have a lot of classes that are available for community members to take, as well as doing teacher training workshops and classes that teachers in the local schools, including local villages, can take. And then we do a fair amount of work with the local tribes from Seldovia, Port Graham, and then Wallach. That's been primarily focused on education programs for the kids.
So what is your vision of the lab?
Jim, we're looking to continue to build the lab in partnership with all the people we work with around the Bay and elsewhere in Alaska to become the place where people choose to come when they have questions, they want to investigate new ways of looking at coastal ecosystems all around southern Alaska. We want the lab in particular to be a place where we can deploy and test new technologies to see how they work in Alaskan conditions before we take them out into the rest of Alaska. And working from there, we're trying to get smarter about how we investigate coastal Alaska, because as you know, there are lots of places where you can't get to very easily, where there are no people. So we need to work out ways of developing instruments that we can put out there when there are no people around. We need to have ways to use the communities, to work with communities, to collect data that are of interest to them, but also that can be fed back to the lab and back to the world in general through the internet.
From a broad perspective, NOAA has an increasing focus on helping communities adapt to climate change. And so the lab is one of the places where we do the science to understand how these systems are changing, how they're changing now in response to climate change, in response to human activities and coastal development, things like that, and then how we can help communities to adapt to those changes in the future.
And thank you for joining us here on Alaska Weather Facts. Until next time.
Welcome back. Well, the sea ice advisory here, pretty much like yesterday, it looks like easterly winds are going to keep this stretch of the heavier ice out to the west and offshore, and not much change here to occur along the east side over the next several days, just kind of undulating around, floating around out there. So could be some very minor changes, but no big changes coming up. And for the southeast coast, forecast tomorrow, small craft advisories, pretty breezy tonight here. Small craft advisories, I think, all through the inside waters, but still 25 knots, Lynn Canal, Stevens Passage, lighter winds, mostly southwest 15 to 20 out along the coast. And then for Monday, south winds 10 to 15, picking up to 20 knots in the extreme north coast. Same thing for northern Lynn Canal, otherwise much lighter to the south. And for Prince William Sound, southeast 20 tomorrow, south 20 for the North Gulf Coast, becoming southwesterly here, increasing to 25 knots there for Kodiak Island and Shelikof Strait, and south to southwest 10 to 15 from Kamishak Bay to northern Cook Inlet. And then switching direction on Monday, northeast 15 here for the inlet, east 20 for in store for Prince William Sound. Small craft advisories for the North Gulf Coast, much lighter winds for the Barren Islands, Kodiak area here, 15, Shelikof Strait and Kamishak Bay. Out to the west there for Bristol Bay, small craft advisories all the way down and across the peninsula for those west winds at 25. And then for Monday, northwest 10 knots to 15 here across the peninsula, and very light variable winds from Castle Cape to Sitkinak. Out to the west, central or the eastern Aleutians, westerlies at 20 knots for tomorrow at 6 to 7 foot seas, and then westerly winds all the way out to Shimei and Attu, all 15 knots. Seas pretty slight for out that way, 3 to 6 feet. And then for Monday, northwesterlies, 15 to 20 here for the western central Aleutians, north to northwest, 15 knots, and that's about it for the Fox Islands with 5 to 6 foot seas. And for the southwest coast, northwest at 20 tomorrow, north 20 St. Lawrence Island, westerlies at 20 knots for the Pribilofs with seas up to 7 feet. And then for the Monday outlook, north winds at 10 knots for the Pribilofs, so pretty light there and not much stronger up towards St. Matthew Island. North to northwest, 15 knots for the southwest coast, a little brisker there for St. Lawrence Island. Small craft advisories for the central eastern Arctic coast all the way over to Demarcation Point. East winds 25 knots with 4-foot seas, 20 knots, 4-foot seas here on the west side. Northerlies from Wales to Cape Thompson at 20. Pretty light winds out here from Cape Beaufort all the way down to the Bering Strait for Monday. And then small craft advisories, southeasterlies here for the western Arctic coast and the central areas, going back easterly down to 20 knots there for the east side with 3 to 4-foot seas. And for tonight, this system continues to move out, but a lot of showers with the upper level low coming across. Some of those on the moderate side, shifting mostly toward the eastern panhandle later on. The next system spreading rain down into the southwest interior. And this front makes it is wettest for tonight for the central Aleutians. Then it begins to dry out a little bit, but it'll be slow going there for tomorrow. A lot of rain in the forecast here for southern Alaska, becoming showery to the west, clearing to the north, way up to the north there. Showers persisting but gradually diminishing for the southeast coast. And on Monday, sunshine breaking out down that way with a few lingering showers in the extreme north, and then moisture sliding northward here brings a chance of rain back to Prince of Wales Island. This front keeps it wet, North Gulf Coast, south central Alaska, right into the Kuskokwim Valley. Chance of thunderstorms there along this occluded front. Sunshine to the north and back to the west. That's a look at the weather for today. Thanks for joining us, and we'll be...
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Alyeska Pipeline Service Company, fueling philanthropic programs and dedicated to creating educational and professional opportunities for Alaska Native people.